give you some.
I'm in the dark over here.
Yeah. Does that bother you, or are you all right?
No, we're good.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, you can't hear. Now you can hear, right?
Now I can hear.
Is that too loud, or is that good?
No, we're good.
All right.
And now for something special. The unit is self-contained with its own saddler, farrier, wheelwright and so on. It's a rigorous training dished out who know all there is to know about horses, and it brings results.
We take you behind the scenes now to show just some of the interesting aspects of this training.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the best podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. Mike Stine is a registered journeyman farrier with an APF1 accreditation. This week's episode, we're going to talk about how to prepare your horse for a farrier, toe cracks and other hoof issues, and rehabilitation of a thoroughbred hoof. All this and much, much more we discuss here on Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. And over to my far right hand side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Travis?
Doing well. Did you survive all the snow and everything that we got here in the Carolinas?
Oh, it snowed in for a month.
Well, we got about 3 or 4 inches here, but you know, it didn't really inhibit the place. We were able to move around and everything. We never lost power, believe it or not. We never lost power out here in our little town.
No, we were good.
Good.
A couple of little tree limbs down, no big deal.
I know. I got one tree out there in the middle of the pasture. I swear it's on its last leg and it just won't fall over. It's dead from last year, and I thought all the ice and stuff would weigh the branches down. Some of the branches are gone, but the actual tree itself has not fallen yet. Now, Mike, here we go. Now, for those of you out there who want to follow along with us, make sure you follow us on YouTube. You can go to Equine Dynamics. For every podcast we do, we have a matching video as well. There's myself and Mike Stine waving at each other. Hi. And I want to show you this. Mike, have you seen this before?
Yes, I have.
What am I holding in my hand?
That is
It looks like some kind of weird S&M toy.
Well, that depends on what you're into, but that's sort of a massage gun, handheld, and it has different attachment goes on the end, so you can work on your horse or yourself or your dog. I don't know if a cat would take it.
No, the cat probably wouldn't say. My wife uses this, and she's got, I think, 2 of them. One's like a really, really industrial one. One's kind of a not as strong. And she works it in the horse's, like, shoulder muscles. And I watch her, and she peels grabs the muscle, like grabbing, like, you know, right here on your chest. She would grab the muscle of the horse and work this up and down. And the horse, and you could just see the horse's eyes kind of, oh.
Yeah, don't you wish she treated you that good?
I know, exactly. Now, with everything going on, I have a question for you. This is just a personal question. With everything going on with COVID and everything, how have you handled COVID being a farrier? Now, I know you're a one-man show. You go out there and you shoe the horses. It's not like you're standing in an audience full of people as far as watching you shoe a horse, unless you're at a clinic or anything like that. You go to someone's property, you do the horse. You might have a trainer or an owner there with you at the time. How have you adapted your job? Has it affected you at all? Or, you know, tell me how you were dealing with COVID right now.
Well,
or in the past.
Right now, if somebody's sick, you don't want to hang out real close with them. Right. I don't care what it is, COVID or not. You know, I'm fairly social distance from people anyway. And I do have one client who has been dealing with some health stuff where, you know, I have one in a 95 mask there, and they have 2 because they want to be very involved with their horses. And it's a little different each place you go. Hopefully the horses are managed well enough, trained well enough, and stand quiet enough that you don't have to have somebody right there handling the horse all the time. Other than that, I'm not in that close contact with people. I don't go out licking as many doorknobs as I used to because, you know, you just do that for a thrill.
Right. But for the most part, you're pretty much isolated as far as COVID. So you really haven't seen any effects as far as like COVID and stuff. Now, they also say something about COVID affecting some animals. Have you heard about in the horse community at all about COVID getting a horse sick or anything like that? The only thing I've seen right now is I think a couple lions in some zoo and a couple apes.
I have not seen that. If it's happening, I have not seen it. You know, just don't know.
All right, guys. Well, stick around. We got a big show to get into and a lot of stuff going on. Stick around. You'll listen to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back.
There was a copper plate screwed in, and they built across it and all this sort of deal. On the side of the foot, quarter crack. Mm-hmm. Well, some quarter cracks you don't necessarily want to build because if you got a lot of movement in there, you damage tissue, it'll abscess and all this. Well, it kept trying to blow crap out, so they kept trying to build it.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the official farrier for the 2018 World Equestrian Games, Mike Stine. And for those out there who have any questions, don't forget, you can always email Mike Stine. Go to equinedynamics.com. At the very bottom of the page, there's a little section you can email Mike if you have any questions, and if you want to show pictures of your horse's feet, what should I do? Does this look good? Does this look right? Any questions at all for Mike Stine, go over to equinedynamics.com, and in the subject header there, put podcast. So it comes directly to him, and he can decipher through all of his other emails that he has. And over to my far right-hand side is Mike Stine. How are you?
I'm doing good, Travis. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So we were talking about COVID, and you don't see it on your end just because you're not dealing down with a whole bunch of people, in your face or talking a whole bunch, and you maintain social distancing. So what do you do to prepare your horse for a farrier for the first time or for any time when you go out there? Preparing your horse for a farrier.
Working on ground manners, working on in-hand handling them, or working around them, tapping on legs, getting legs and feet used to being managed. If you can't work on a horse, you can't do a very good job. And the better behaved the horse is, one thing physically is less abusive to me, and you can always do a nicer job on a horse that cooperates.
Now, does it make sense to put shoes on an unbroken horse?
No, but you do need to do some maintenance on unbroken horses, and you can start when they're young. It doesn't have to be a big deal. I mean, I've had calls here in recent history where somebody was fussing they couldn't get a farrier to work on their horse, and the answer from the owner was, well, she's sweet. She just throws people around, and nobody will do my horse's feet, and you're telling me you won't come do my horse's feet. I'm like, I don't need to be thrown around anymore. Neither does anybody. So that's a management, ground manners, and that sort of deal. And if you can't work there again, if you can't work on the horse, if you're going to get beat up, they're not paying you enough to go to the emergency room. It hurts.
So let's say you're coming over to our property, you prefer the horse already be on cross ties, or do you physically, on some people's property, do you physically have to go in the pasture or in the stall and bring the horse out, put the halter on? How far are you? I know you're a great customer service person. I know that in you, Mike. But what is the proper etiquette for when a farrier's coming out for your horse? What's proper etiquette to get the horse ready for you?
Somebody needs to be there to manage the horse. If I got to retrieve horses, I don't do them. You don't need to be left by yourself. People will ask you to, but you don't need to be out by yourself working. Anything could happen with a horse, anything. You never know some days. But, I can't handle a horse and be under him too. There are times, like trimming brood mares, we'll do that out in the fields. But somebody's there to retrieve, catch, release, all that stuff, the horses. And, there are people that will go out there and do it, but there are a multitude of reasons why you should not. The owner needs to be responsible for their animal. Somebody needs to be responsible for the animal and management of the animal.
Now, my knowledge as far as go getting the horse, sometimes my wife has to work late and she's not here on the property, and I have to go out there. I know how to throw the halter on, which is basic. First you got to catch the horse, and then bringing the horse out and putting on the crop. That's it. That's the extent of the knowledge that I have. So with someone at my level, just being there with you, I don't know how to, I can push the horse with my shoulder, old football style, move that way. I don't know how to make the horse shift left and right. Someone with my level of training, which is very, very minute, would that be acceptable enough just to have someone there with you?
Well, that can be a little tough. There again, if you've got a horse that has very good manners, that's not that big of a deal.
Right.
If you've got a horse that is aggravating to work with, I need somebody that has some horse experience and knows how to manage the situation.
But you would assume that the owner or whoever has that horse knows that their horse has some manner issues, and you would assume that that person would be there to lend a hand with you to get the horse ready to be what do you call it? Shod? What was
shod, trimmed, whatever maintenance needs to be done. And you know what I assume starts with, correct?
Yes, it makes a A out of you and me. All right, guys, when we come back, we'll get into toe cracks and other hoof issues. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back.
And, We took a bandsaw and cut the saw in half. Behind all this, there's a huge abscess pocket. And we had to put our horse down over an abscess. And it's like Doc says, if they left this foot alone, let it blow out and drain, this horse they've been riding it now.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, the 2017 American Eventing Championship farrier, and also creating sounder horses from the ground up. Over to my far right hand side is Mike Stine.
Hello, Travis.
Hi. And don't forget, if you have any questions, if you want to send any pictures to Mike Stine to get his opinion on what's going on with your horse, go over to equinedynamics.com and fill out the little, I think it's just a little email. Fill that out and send it to him. Make sure you put podcast in the subject line. It'll come straight to him and he'll answer you. And actually, we'll answer it on the very next podcast as well. And don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video as well. You can see myself and Mike Stine over there. I'm going to switch cameras here to break up the monotony here. There we go. And the way you find that is go over to YouTube and search for Equine Dynamics. And make sure you subscribe, like, and stuff. Mike is putting together a whole bunch of different small little 5 to 8 minute videos based on some of the topics that we've talked about here on Equine Dynamics, and they're kind of a tutorial of what to look for. It's a lot of pictures of Mike bent over, which I was watching a couple videos the other day. I'm like, oh, there's the back side of Mike, and there's the left side of Mike, and there's the right side of Mike. It's hard to see Mike Stine standing upright in some of these videos, but nonetheless, he does a lot of demonstrations on those videos over there at Equine Dynamics located on YouTube. Now, Mike, we're going to talk about toe cracks. Now, we've talked about what was the quarter cracks?
Quarter cracks.
And what else did we talk about? We talked about abscess. Now we're going to talk about toe cracks. And what are toe cracks?
Well, a toe crack is, like it says, a crack in the toe of the hoof.
Okay.
And there again, like everything else, it's management.
What is the most common thing that causes toe cracks? Is it lack of diet? Is it lack of maintenance? Is it lack of the foundation or the environment that it's in?
I'm going to say that all that will play in. Some horses have just a structurally stronger hoof than others. Some have brittle hooves. Some have very pliable, very strong hooves. And, toe cracks don't have to turn into, like any of the cracks, they don't have to be turned into a monster. If you're doing maintenance on the horse regular, get the pressure off the scalds nut. You don't have to turn it into a huge ordeal where we have to do a lot to reconstruct a hoof or lace it or build it or whatever. But if the horse's foot is not balanced correctly, most feet are going to shove forward really hard. And if you keep pushing it forward, eventually you'll start levering that toe away, whether it comes from the back of the foot or the front of the foot. And I find, working in the vet clinic, most of the problems are in managing the back of the foot. People don't think about it, but when the heels crush under, it shoves the whole foot right out the front. So I'm going to check that, not just the toe crack. Where's the pressure coming from? Where's the force coming from? And we're going to unload some of that pressure so that the toe has a correct chance to grow out, correct itself, and also checking up the back, probing up the back of the crack to see if we got any fungus started, especially in this part of the country. Out in the Midwest, not so much. But here in our wet environment, southern environment, we got a lot of funguses that you don't see in other parts of the country. Fungus will get in that crack and just eat away at it. And if you don't check that, clean it out, pack it with something, do something to maintain that, it can eat its way all the way up to the coronary band and make just a huge wreck out of the foot.
I know my wife uses what they call the toe pick that goes in there to clean out the shoe, and then she grabs this big tub and pulls out this little wand that's got like a little like a cotton ball on the end of it, and then she wipes the top of the hoof with that. What does that do? And is that necessary? I say it's necessary. Of course it's necessary. She wouldn't do it. But what's the advantage of doing that on a regular basis, right?
Well, I don't know exactly what she's using as far as the wand. Could be a moisturizer. That's one of those things that I question a lot of times.
Is it cosmetic or is it just peace of mind? Hey, if I put this on the horse's foot, everything will be good. Everything will be good. So I think of it as like vitamins or minerals or something going on the hoof. I could be wrong.
Some of it is peace of mind. Now, there are a lot of different things you can put on a foot. Most of what I suggest are more hardeners. And in this environment, this time of year, we got sopping wet feet after the last couple of snows we've had.
We're still sopping wet out there now.
Right. And in my mind, when these horses' feet are just soaking wet, you kind of soak the natural oils out of the foot. And when they dry, they'll crack. I'm not sure you can paint that back in. But, you know, I've worked on horses out in the Midwest, in Arizona and Colorado, and a few other places where it's a very dry environment. And you don't get some of the distortions, the flares, the hoof cracks that we do here, and you certainly don't get the fungus like we do here.
So I'm going to ask a really, because I'm a basic person. Like I said a million times, I'm a radio guy. My wife has horses. She's had horses her whole entire life. This is a question that I would ask because I don't know, and this is just my simple brain of thinking. If I see a horse's hoof, I could have sworn I've seen this before, and the front of it, the toe is cracked, like there's a line crack. That I assume that's a toe crack, correct?
Correct.
So can you physically, hear me out, I know everyone's going to roll their eyes and palm face themselves. Can you put like a metal bracket on that and pop a couple screws on either side of that to keep the thing like the Liberty Bell from splitting anymore? I mean, is that a reasonable question to ask? I don't know.
No, that is not a unreasonable question at all.
Okay.
In severe cases, you can plate them.
Okay, so that's what it's called, plating them.
You put some kind of a plate across, piece of copper pipe, plumbing pipe, aluminum. Usually if I do one that's that degree, I take a piece of aluminum and I'll glue it to the foot. And then with some of the fabrics we've got out now, years ago, when the adhesives were not like they are, little number 8 pan heads, 1/2 inch long screws through a plate anchored to the foot, or lacing the foot where you actually drill holes and you run stainless steel wire through, and you can't you tighten it up to stabilize the foot. As far as that goes, on a lot of those, if you can pull some clips on the shoe, if you're attaching a shoe to a foot, and normally if I got a foot that's that bad that you have to do all that, something's going to be attached to the foot to stabilize it. This don't need to be left barefoot if it's to the point that you have to do a lot of reconstruction in that crack. So
it is common to patch it, almost like you would patch a boat with like fiberglass or something like that.
Right. But when it shows up, I do something like right now, we just cruise on and it grows out. Most of them can be dealt with without going to these extremes. If you have to go to these extremes, it's been left until, well, it's a mess. And that's where somebody that has experience is a good deal working with your vet farrier team.
Now, if I saw a toe crack, and let's say, Mike, you come here on the property every 6 weeks or so. If I saw a toe crack, let's say a week after you left. Now, granted, if you've done your portion of your job correctly, you shouldn't see a toe crack. But let's just say 2 weeks out of you've gone, I start to see a toe crack. Is there something I can do until you come back again for that 4 weeks? Or is it something that, hey, I got to get, Mike on the phone here, or I'm going to slap a copper tube on this horse's foot? Is it something that it needs to be handled right away, or can it wait until the next time that your cycle comes out to do the horses?
If you're going to see something start forming between shoeings, which I kind of plan on it not, but I'm not going to say it's never happened because it has. If you want to treat the area with a fungicide, one of the hardeners, your vet's soul paint, anything to knock any fungus out of the crack, because some of the problem we run into this part of the country is you start a crack, it's a place for fungus to attack.
Yeah, it can hide.
A mess. Truth is, you could probably hit it with some super glue. I don't know that would hold, but you can. And actually, there's some cases where I do use a little super glue on feet for some particular purposes.
Now, is it a special super glue, or is it actually like the Gorilla super glue that you get off the shelf, like at a Home Depot or something like that? Is it like equine friendly, I guess is what I'm saying?
Well, there are super glues that people use. Typically, I use like an ultra thin. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if there's that much difference between super glue and Gorilla glue and what you can get at the hobby shops as far as that goes. It's not something I use every day, but occasionally it's appropriate for a situation. Just
to get till the next time that you show up. You're not saying this is a permanent fix. This is just until someone can come out and actually trim or do everything, patch everything correctly.
Right. Super glue the ultra thin will penetrate into the hoof wall a little bit and kind of reinforce it. Mm-hmm. And also if you put a smear of super glue over top of your builds when you build, it helps keep the water out, kind of seals it up.
Oh yeah.
Because the acrylics are probably a little more, how to say this, they're a little more porous than you would think. And you can get some water in there, and slowing down any water transfer on any kind of build material is crucial. When people can't stick build material, well, the foot's not dry enough, and that's a whole nother ball of wax.
All right, guys, stick around. We got one more little segment to get to, and we're going to talk about this little horseshoe. If you're watching this on the camera here, this little horseshoe that looks like Mike dragged it behind his car or his truck. It's all scuffed up and skimmed up, but there's a reason behind all these scuffs and skims. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. You good?
Yeah. Question.
Yeah.
If I take the horseshoe while we're talking about it and demonstrate it on the table, can the camera see that?
Let's see. I'm sure once you, I can move this down.
Okay, that would be good.
And we'll do that. Move that red binder out of the way. Just let me know when you're getting ready to do it.
Okay.
Let's move this out of the way completely.
Let me get the, I guess. Yeah, let me just swallow some water.
Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine, creating sounder horses from the ground up. Mike Stine is a registered journeyman farrier with an APF1 accreditation. And don't forget, if you have any questions or anything like that for Mike Stine, you can email him. Go to equinedynamics.com. Fill out the little form there at the bottom of the page and email all your questions, any pictures you have about your horse's feet. If you've got a toe crack and you got that metal plate on that, I'd love to see the metal plate on those horses. Email Mike Stine, and in the subject line put podcast, and we'll show it, and we'll also answer all your questions on the very next podcast as well. And over to my far right hand side is Mike Stine. How are you?
Hello, Travis.
Now, what do you have in your hand? It looks like you've gotten some kind of horseshoe. Hold it up to the camera so everyone can see. There you go. It's a horseshoe, and it looks like you've taken a grinder or something to it. What is that horseshoe from, and why is it all scuffed up like that?
Well, this horseshoe was actually in an article in the American Farriers Journal back in 2000. At the
Here, let me see it first. While you talk, I'll demonstrate. Go ahead, and I'll give it back to you. Don't worry.
You can't have my horseshoe.
No.
At the International Hoof Care Summit, we did a talk, a panel discussion on rehab of the thoroughbred racehorse foot. And there seems to be something left out sometimes between the track and when they land on people's farms after a track life.
Okay.
Here
you go. I'll give it back to you now.
Yeah, track farriers have a tough job keeping a foot together. Those feet are under a lot of pressure. They can only work with a really small base because, I've done enough track shoeing to know that it's a tough job. I haven't done a lot of track shoeing. I've had time to discuss with some very good track farriers some of what they're up against. And I've seen horses that come straight from the track, which feet are actually very nice. Because these horses, when they're running, some of them are shoed 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I've worked on a horse and redone stuff at 2 weeks before, which is way over the amount of maintenance most people will ever do on a foot. Now, since you have to shoe tight, you have to bring the horse around on a quicker schedule. It seems like some of these horses, when they go off the track, we turn them out in the field, we leave the shoes on, we're going to let them grow some foot, and they let it go till the shoes fall off. Well, as you grow the toe out, it starts levering away, and everything collapses forward, the heels flatten out, and there you go. And then when they see it at the farm, they look, oh my God, look what that farrier did to these horses' feet. These track farriers. Now, these track farriers are a good track farrier is an outstanding farrier. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it. They have a tough job, and they do a heck of a job with what they're working with.
Now, is it the equivalent of the analogy that I said is it's like women when they get acrylic nails and if they get the acrylic nails and of course their nails grow and stuff and the acrylic of course falls off or something happens and they get their nails redone. It's like leaving them on for a full year. Is that analogy correct? Assuming, as far as the shoes on the horse works the same way?
Right. There comes a point where you have left it on there above and past the window of opportunity for it to do good. And then at that point, it starts doing damage. And that is a maintenance deal. You know, and what we're doing with this shoe is...
Well, you want to show me some demonstrations?
Sure.
Now, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video as well, and you can see this in real time. Go over to YouTube, search Equine Dynamics, and you can see Mike Stine here with his horseshoe and the way it works, and he's going to use his hand as the foot. So hold on, give me 1 second. Go ahead.
Okay. This shoe has been forged out. It was a pre-clip shoe, and I drew out clips and made them bigger. That way we use minimal as far as nails, as far as attachments. Use a small nail, maybe a couple of them. You can clean out, and there are some adhesives, even though this is still shoe, you can glue shoes with, and you can run some foam around the inner web to control the adhesive so you don't get up on the horse's sole. You want it glued to the wall. But the idea is when the horse loads, you want this to lift the angle slightly. Also, the shoe is beveled to roll medial laterally. So if you've got a stressed out hoof wall, as he rolls across, the shoe rolls on the ground instead of that lever being out here and pulling against the hoof wall. And when they're moving, they roll forward slightly. And one thing you need to check when you do this to a shoe is because of the curve and it being tighter here, this will end up extended down. And it'll end up almost like a toe grab, and you'll get it break. So I want it to come across when they're moving, will come across and roll and just cruise right across it. And instead of this breaking right at this point.
And this was all in the article that was on the I forget what you said.
American Farriers Journal.
Okay, and then this horseshoe is this the actual horseshoe that you were talking?
This is the horseshoe that the pictures are of in the American Farriers Journal.
Okay. Let me hold that up one more time. I'm gonna put it up here. I know it's so.
Okay.
There we go.
But I've recently been asked to put together something geared more towards future brood mares coming between the racetrack and the brood farm, because working on brood mares, some of those mares have some horrendous feet, and the ball's been dropped, and something can be done to help keep those feet in better shape before they hit the brood farm.
So when you do the horses, do you have to physically grind every one of these down, or do they make the shoe like this? Or is this I assume this is your own design because...
Well, there are some similar shoes on the market now. They've come, we don't have to make everything. Now, for me to carry everything you can possibly have to put on a horse's foot, I'd need a semi-truck.
Right.
And, I work out of the forge all the time, so I can take any shoe and it become what I want it to be, whether it be parts welded onto it, parts cut off. If you notice at the back corner of my truck, there's a belt grinder that swings out.
Yes.
I have no problem with using power equipment. Most of that shoe toe is forged out to make it a little bit wider. And then I did clean up with the grinder to make sure we had a good clean roll across the ground in any direction, because I can give it a little bit more.
So that shoe right there is mostly for thoroughbred racing horses.
This would be for after the track.
After the track. So these are its slippers when it's house slippers, like when it's walking around the house and stuff. Like I've got my house slippers on here in the studio. They got a sole on them so I don't get dirt in my toes, but they're still slippers. They're comfy shoes.
Right. I spent 4 years working with an operation that took track horses to do a little rehab and get them set up to go to. Most of them went to be 3-day event horses, but if they had been thrown out in a field and not managed for a while, we had some really ugly feet to deal with. And you can buy every kit in the world, but then you've got so much stuff you got to stock, or you can build ways to do it, which I apprenticed with older farriers that were older when I was a young man. Mm-hmm. And you learn how to do things. If not, they just kick you to the curb.
All right, guys, we're going to take one more little short break, and we'll come back and wrap up the show. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. He'll be right back. Good. Awesome.
I'm making a list about this long of YouTube stuff we need to shoot.
Yeah. Do you have how do you do it? With your phone, or do you have a camera?
I have a digital camera, and I have a phone.
Okay.
So it kind of depends. The problem with working in the field by myself, I have stuff constantly that could be shot. I have somebody handling the horses and me. And sometimes if I had a helper, occasionally I could get a lot of that stuff videoed, which is hard to video in the field while working on horses. And
you ready?
yes, sir.
Okay, we're going to come back and just wrap up the show. Go down the list of what we learned today. Ready?
Yep.
And don't worry about the time. You know, time's nothing up here.
It's your time. We're not worried about it.
Right. Here we go. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stine. Don't forget to follow him on YouTube, and the way you do that is to search Equine Dynamics on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to him, and you can see for every podcast we do, we have a matching video. Mike, we were just talking about all the different videos that he's got. He's got a list a mile long of all the different stuff he's going to do and shoot. And we were talking about the tripod and everything, that he needs to get himself a little tripod and just kind of set it up. But he was worried about, he's got some bad horses sometimes that like to step on things, and he was worried about losing his phone. And speaking of losing his phone, over there on my far right-hand side is Mike Stine.
Hello, Travis.
And don't forget, if you have any questions, you can email Mike at any time. Just go to equinedynamics.com, click on the little section there, and send us an email. Any questions, any pictures, any photos you want to share with your horse. Even if you just want to show, hey, this is my baby. This is my baby. Look how pretty he is. We'll put it up on the show, and we'll also answer your question on the very next podcast as well. Now, Mike, what did we learn today? Preparing your horse for a farrier. Top 3 things you should do.
Make sure your horse is manageable. If you want good work done on your horse needs to be good to work on.
And toe cracks and other hoof issues. How do we address them in between cycles of you coming out?
Fungicide, hopefully on my clients' horses, that's not an issue. And take care of them early on. That way don't have to become a big mess, and Travis won't get the pleasure of seeing wires and screws and build and fabric and everything else glued to a horse's foot to stabilize the foot.
Look like a transformer out there. And also rehabilitations over Thoroughbred and your horseshoe that you designed over there, the best thing for that.
The rehabilitation of the Thoroughbred's foot, well, the ideal thing would be manage the foot before it becomes a mess, and then move forward. Because the thing of it is, if you're stressing the lamini, I don't care if it's a laminitic horse or it's just pure torque ripping away at it. If you've got a big elf toe, you have taken a big wrench, put on the end of that toe, and start trying to pry it away. If you start ripping at the coronary or at the lamini, and you have scar tissue in the lamini, you will have weak areas in the lamini.
Awesome. Anything else before we let you go, Mike? Back on the road.
Yeah, I know somebody that had a dog named Tripod. He's a 3-legged dog.
3-legged dog. Did he have the one in the front and 2 in the back?
That's right. No, I think this one had 1 in the back, 2 on the front, but he's a good boy.
He got around fine.
He was adopted because he was a tripod.
All right, guys, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for downloading us, sharing us, and subscribing to us as well. Don't forget, if you want to ask any questions or share some pictures, go over to equinedynamics.com. In the subject line, make sure you put podcast, fill out your little question there, and we will answer on the very next podcast. On behalf of myself, my name is Travis Holmes, and Mike Stine on my far right-hand side.
Thank you, Travis.
You guys
Thank you, everybody.
You guys have a good night. Thanks. See you next week. There you go. Now wave to the cameras. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Stop.
They said they were trying so hard to make sure the foot didn't crack, and I'd crack all the way up the coronary band. And, it's like we can't let the foot come apart. What they should have done is drop back and remove the side of it up to the coronary band, drained it, and then stabilized it if they needed to. Because I've done that. But if you get the 2 parts shifting separately, sometimes they'll abscess.